Hey everyone, welcome to week 6. Can you believe it? We're on week 6. Wow. Just a couple little reminders. The 6 weeks ends next Monday, September 21st. So if you owe any makeup work or you are planning on going back and resubmitting anything because you're unhappy, you're not satisfied with your grade, that is fine. I need that to be done by September 19th, which is this Saturday, so that I can have time to grade it and get it back into the grade book. So again, I'm only talking about makeup work. If you have any makeup work or anything you want to go back and resubmit, because everything is still open, I haven't closed or turned off any of the assignments. If you want to do that, please do that by Saturday, September 19th, so that I have time to get it into the grade book before we put grades in for report cards. Okay, so what are we talking about? We're still talking about parallel lines this week, and we're still talking about the angle pairs, alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, consecutive interior, consecutive exterior, and whether or not they're congruent or supplementary. At this point from last week, you should know which pairs are congruent and which are supplementary, because what you're going to see is we are going to use them to set up equations and solve them. Geometry is famous for starting out with a concept and then learning it and then ending up setting up equations and solving for variables and plugging in. You will see that happens quite a bit. All right, so today you will identify parallel lines and the angle pairs so that you can solve problems involving angles formed when parallel lines are intersected by a transversal. You have it when you score an 80% or higher. So here are the things that you need to make sure that you have committed to memory and that you are good to go with. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then you have three pairs that are congruent: alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, and corresponding angles are your congruent pairs. And you have two pairs that are supplementary: your consecutive interior angles and your consecutive exterior angles. And remember, supplementary means they add up to 180, so you might want to make that note just in case you forget. And I didn't say it, but congruent, remember, same measures, so technically they're equal to each other. So we're just going to jump right into the examples because that is not new information. That is information that we worked with last week. We only worked with numbers and the angle pairs. And so you guys see, looking at this example, now we've got variables and now we have to write equations. Again, don't forget, if you are not a super solver of equations, please use your Desmos. You have it, use it, work smarter, not harder. All right, so these kind of problems, they're going to give you a picture. Now, how do I know my lines are parallel? Sometimes they'll have them labeled like line A, line B, and they'll tell you in the direction somewhere that A is parallel to B. Sometimes you'll have a picture like this. You don't have any letters on your lines, but remember, if you see these little arrows, sorry, not arrows, triangles, and there is a match on the other line, then they're telling you that those two lines are parallel to each other. So when you get to these problems, again, I have it set up. This is the process that you should go through every time. And this is the same process that we did for complementary, supplementary, vertical. You have to look at your angles. So this angle right here, they're telling me is x plus 80. This angle right here, they are telling me is 5x. So you need to look at those and decide, are they alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, consecutive interior, or consecutive exterior? So I look and I go, okay, well, They're on the same side of my transversal, so that eliminates any alternates. Okay, they're not alternate interior, they're not alternate exterior. Then I also have to look at their position. So if I look, the x plus 80 is inside my parallel lines. The 5x is outside my parallel lines. So I have two angles that are on the same side of the transversal. One of them is inside my parallel lines, one of them is outside my parallel lines. Okay. What angle pair is that? That is your corresponding. Okay, so they are corresponding angles. What do I know about corresponding angles? That they are congruent. Now I got to write an equation. Remember, congruent means they have the same measure. So I'm going to take one of the angles, and it doesn't matter which one you start. I'm going to start with the 5x. And I'm going to set it equal to the other angle. So there's my equation. So once I write my equation, again, type it into Desmos, or if you like, if you're good and can do it, work it out. Okay, so if I just so x is equal to 20. And that's my answer. Now, they also could ask you, hey, well, what's the actual angle measure? What does the angle that's x plus 80 really measure? Because it's not 20. 20 is your variable value. So what if I wanted to know what this angle measured? Well, then we would just plug in. So I would take my 20 and plug it into x plus 80. Okay, so x plus 80, instead of x, I'd put a 20. So I would find out that this angle would be 100 degrees. Now, what if they wanted the other angle? What if you know this angle is 100? How could I find the other angle that's marked as 5x? Yeah, two ways. Plug in, or, hey, look, I know they're corresponding. If they're corresponding, I don't really need to plug in. I know that this angle is 100. Why do I know that? Because when you have parallel lines, your corresponding angles are congruent. Okay? All right, moving on. So again, same process. Okay. I know my lines are parallel because I have the little triangle markings. They tell me, hey, parallel lines. So I gotta look. I got 2x minus 10, that's the angle up here, and I have 65 minus x. So again, I have to decide what kind of angles I have, and I look and I say, well, they're on different sides of my transversal. As soon as you say different sides of my transversal, okay, you know you're talking about probably alternate. Now let's look at where they actually are. Are they inside my parallel lines, outside my parallel lines, or do you have one inside and one outside? If you look, both of those angles are located inside my parallel lines. Since I have two angles that are on different sides of my transversal, and they're not next to each other, that are inside my parallel lines, those are your alternate interior angles. What do we know about alternate interior angles when our lines are parallel? That they are congruent. So, what would my equation be? Congruent means they have the same measure, which means they're equal. Doesn't matter which angle you start with. I'm going to say 2x minus 10 equals 65 minus x. Again, solve it. Okay. Plug it into Desmos. Solve it by hand. For me, I can solve it about as fast as I could pull Desmos up and type it in. Okay, and you will get x equals 25. But again, if you need to, you can use your Desmos. Remember, your answer is where the line that is graphed crosses the x-axis. So you'd have to zoom out to see the 25, but type it into Desmos if you're not good at solving your equations. So again, what if they wanted to know what the angle measured? Okay, 2x minus 10. What if they asked you to find that actual angle measure? Then you would come up here and say, okay, 2 times what I get for x, 25, minus 10. Do the math, 50 minus 10. So you'd find out that this angle is 40 degrees. How could I find out the other angle? Again, same deal. You could do 65 minus 25, plug it in. Or you could go, hey, I know they're alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are congruent, so the other angle has to be 40 degrees. So I'm going to give you a minute to look at these and you kind of see the process and see if you can figure out what type of angles we have. Okay. What is the relationship? That just means are they congruent or supplementary? And then see if you can write the equation. So like I said, give you a minute. All right, so let's see what you came up with. What kind of angles are these? They're on different sides of your transversal. They're not next to each other. And they are outside my parallel lines. Both of them are located outside. So they are alternate exterior angles. Good. And what do we know about alternate exterior angles? Alternate exterior angles are congruent. If they are congruent, then I know that they have the same measure, so I'm going to set them equal. So what equation did we write? 2x plus 10 equals 86 plus x. Good. Now, could I have written 86 plus x equals 2x plus 10? Absolutely. Okay. Just depends on how you set it up. Either way works. Again, now do the algebra. Okay, and I'm speeding through the algebra because at this point, you should be good with this. Again, if you struggle, excuse me, use your Desmos. So subtract your x from both sides. Gives me x plus 10 equals 86. Subtract your 10 from both sides. So x is 76. Okay. Again, let's say they want this bottom angle measure. Okay. They say, hey, what's that angle measure? Simple plug in 86 plus x. Well, we found it to be 76. Put it there, do the math, and our angle comes out to be 162 degrees. Again, if they wanted the other angle, again, plug in or realize they're alternate exterior, and alternate exterior angles are congruent, so this one has to be the same as what we just found. All right. Be careful on this one because we ran into this problem when we were doing complementary, supplementary, vertical. Some of you just ran through and set everything equal to each other. Okay. You have to know what kind of angles they are to decide if they're congruent or supplementary before you write your equation. Not everything is going to be equal to each other. Okay, so that's why it's important that you make sure you identify what kind of angles they are. When you guys get to the practice and the assessment, it's not going to have this setup on it, but it's still the setup that you need to run through mentally in order to set up your equation. So again, do not just set everything equal to each other. Okay? Not everything will be equal to each other. If you just eyeball this, 3x minus 10 appears to be an acute angle. 5x plus 30 appears to be an obtuse angle. Okay. Common sense should tell you I cannot just say they're equal because one is small and one is less than 90 and one is greater than 90. That would never equate out to being equal. So be careful of that. I saw it happen a lot. Complementary, supplementary, vertical. All right, so what kind of angles do we have? Again, we look at the picture. Oh, they're on the same side of the transversal. So that basically eliminates your alternates. Where are the angles located? They are both inside my parallel lines. Excuse me. I just choked on my spit. Sorry. They're both inside my parallel lines. Okay. So, since they're on the same side of the transversal, and they're both inside my parallel lines, these are consecutive interior angles. And what do we know about consecutive interior angles? Consecutive interior angles are good. Supplementary. Now, remember, what does supplementary mean? It means they add up to. $180. Sorry guys, allergies are kicking my tail. All right, so they add up to 180 degrees. So you take your first angle, and again, you could start with the other one if that made you happy. 3x minus 10 plus, because they add up to, then you take your second angle, 5x plus 30 equals 180. So that is my equation. Again, you could have written 5x plus 30 plus 3x minus 10 equals 180. What you don't want to do is set them equal because they are not. So be careful of that. All right, so let's solve this really quickly. Again, Desmos is your best friend. But by hand, combine like terms. 3x and 5x is 8x. Negative 10 plus 30 is positive 20. Once you combine like terms, now it's just a two-step. Subtract the 20 from both sides. Divide by 8 on both sides. So x is 20. Again, let's say they wanted the 5x plus 30 angle. Because again, these are not equal, so they will have different measurements. So you would come here, instead of 5x, you would say 5 times my x, because that's multiplication. So we found it to be 20, plus 30. So do the math. This angle is 130. What if they asked me for the other angle? Same thing, plug and chug. Still got 20, so that would be 60 minus 10, 50 degrees. Okay. Could you have done a shortcut to get to the 50 if you knew that this bottom angle was 130? Would there have been a faster way to get to that? Yeah, faster, if you were paying attention, would have been, hey, they're consecutive interiors, so they have to add up to 180. 180 minus, what do we get for the first angle? 130. It gives you, so either or. All right, so this one right here I put on here because people always get thrown off because the parallel lines are now running vertically instead of horizontally. Don't let that throw you off. If it's hard for you to look at, then turn it. Okay, you can turn your paper. It's a little harder to turn your screen, but Or some people just redraw them. I mean, if you don't want to turn your screen. So what do I mean? I say, well, sometimes people just be careful if you're going to redraw that you put the right stuff in the right place. So the 2x is up here, and then the 98 is inside. So we know they're parallel because they put the arrows or the triangles on there for excuse me. So now we have to decide what kind of angles these are. So if we look, all right, they're on different sides. Cool. Where's the 2x? Outside. Where's the 98 degrees? Inside. Okay, so they're alternate because they're on different sides of the transversal and they're not next to each other. But I have one on the outside and one on the inside of my parallel lines. Do we have an angle pair for that description? No, right? We don't. So, they don't fit into any of our types. So you're going to have to do a little extra step. And there's a couple ways that you can do this. The first way is to recognize, and they will throw one at you like this, so make sure you watch this, and if you don't get it, rewind it and rewatch it. Because they're not alternate interior, they're not alternate exterior, they're not corresponding, they're not consecutive interior, they're not consecutive exterior. So we don't know if they're congruent or supplementary. So what you do is use old stuff to help you figure it out. What do I mean by that? Well, if I know this angle up here is 2x, then, excuse me. What kind of angles are these? They are vertical. What do we remember from, I think, week 2 about vertical angles? Vertical angles are congruent. So I could put the 2x right here. Why would I want to put the 2x right here? Well, because I recognize, hey, these two angles right here, once I get the 2x there, are consecutive interior angles, and I do know something about consecutive interior angles. Now, is that the only way I could have come up with that? No. Okay. But I'm going to write my equation using consecutive interior. What do we know about consecutive interior angles? Consecutive interior angles are supplementary, which means they add up to 180. So, what would my equation be? 2x plus 98, first angle plus the second angle, equals 180. Now, let's say you didn't see that vertical angle there. Let's say you were like, yeah, I don't see that. All right, so let's erase, just to show you that there are different options. Fix my lines here. You could have also done the same thing with your 98. And actually, there's a couple different things you could do with the 98. You could have gone, hey, this angle's 98, this is vertical, so this is 98, and then said these two angles, the 2x and the 98, are consecutive exterior. Okay, I know they're supplementary. That's viable. There is also another way, but I'm going to kind of leave that out. If you see another way and you want to run it by me, send me a message and we'll talk about it. Let's just solve this, because if I throw too much at you, I'm going to get you confused, and I don't want to do that. So we got the 2x here because we had vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent. And then the 2x and the 98, we figured out were consecutive interior. So 2x plus 98, and set it equal to 180. This is an easy math. We like this. Subtract the 98. What does that leave us with? 82. Good. Divide both sides by 2. So x is 41. And again, they could ask you to plug in to the 2x. They may say, hey, what's this angle measure? Tell me. And you could plug in. So be careful. Make sure, because you will see one like that. If they're not related, that you do that extra step to find a relationship. All right. They are also going to give you what they like to call real-world problems with parallel lines, so that's why I threw this one on here. Use the diagram of the picnic table to answer the questions. And they want the measure, remember that's the measure of angle 1, measure of angle 2, measure of angle 3. Now, this throws people for some reason because it becomes a picnic table instead of just some lines. If it bothers you or there's too much going on, what you can do is redraw it and make it easier to look at. Okay, because that's what it looks like. Now, if you wanted to extend your lines up here, that's fine, but they didn't. So, they want angle 1, angle 2, and angle 3. So you just got to go use what you know and figure it out. Some of you might want to fill in first. Okay, but let's see if we can get angle 1. So, is angle 1 related to any of these angles? And if so, how? Well, hopefully everybody sees, look, angle 1 and this 115 degree angle are what kind of angles? Yep, they're vertical angles. Now, does that have anything to do with your lines being parallel? Nope, it's old stuff. But you can use old stuff. You can use vertical and you can use linear that we learned, again, back in like week 2. So, what do we know about vertical angles? Vertical angles are congruent. So if this is 115, then angle 1 is 115 degrees. And I would actually write it on my picture because it's probably going to help me get angle 2 or angle 3. Okay. Now, let's see if we can get to angle 2. So, they don't specifically tell you, but they assume, and that's never a good thing, but they are assuming that you realize, if this is a picnic table, that the top of the picnic table is parallel to the, I guess this would probably be the seat part of the picnic table. So this line, if it's, constructed correctly, they should run parallel. Okay. So, how can we get to angle 2? Okay, I see one way, 2 ways at least. To get to angle 2, we could say it's alternate interior to the 115. This 115 is alternate interior angle to angle 2. Okay. We could also say it corresponds to which angle? It's corresponding to angle 1. Okay. Different people will see it differently. So, what do we know about alternate interior angles, or what do we know about corresponding angles? Either one? Good. They're congruent. So angle 2 is 115. Now we have to get angle 3. And again, I see at least 2 ways to get it. And this goes back to last week where we just spent time filling in the picture. So one way to get it would be to do what? Yeah, these are consecutive interior. And what do I know about consecutive interior angles? They add up to 180. Okay. So if this is 115, I can do 180 minus 115. And that will give me angle 3. So let's see, what would that be? 65. Now, does anybody see a different way to get there? Yeah. Angle 2 and 3 are linear. Again, flashing back to week 2. What do we know about linear angles? Oh, they're next to each other and make a straight line and add up to 180. So I also could have said 180 minus 115 using angle 2. So again, different people will see it differently. As long as your reasoning is valid, go with it. So now you just got to fill in your picture. Measure of angle 1, we figured it was 115 degrees. Measure of angle 2, we also came up with 115. Measure of angle 3 came out to be different. I don't know what happened there. 65 degrees. All right, so that's it. Just some examples. There weren't really any notes because what we used is what we learned last week. Alternate interior angles congruent, alternate exterior angles congruent, corresponding angles congruent, consecutive interior angles supplementary, consecutive exterior angles supplementary, and then they threw in from week 2 vertical angles, they're also congruent, and linear pair, which are also supplementary. So just make sure you know which ones are congruent and which ones are supplementary. Okay. Go through that process. Hey, what kind are they? Okay, what do I know about them? That will allow you to set up your equation. All right, well, thank you for listening. That's it. I don't have a second video with examples because it's incorporated in here. So now you can hop on and try to do the practice. Let me know, send me a message if you need any help. I will be glad to help you. All right, thank you.